Rosa Parks, daughter of James and Leona Macaulay, was born in Tuskegee, Alabama on February 4, 1913. A few years later, her brother Sylvester was born. Shortly after Sylvester, Rosa's parents separated. At the age of 2, her mother, and her brother relocated to Pine Level, Alabama. She spent the remainder of her childhood years living on her grandparents' farm. Her grandparents, Rose and Sylvester Edwards, were former slaves and advocates for racial equality. Rosa's mother was a teacher, and her family valued education. She was homeschooled up until the age of 11. At the age of 11, Rosa moved to Montgomery, where she would attend the industrial school for girls. She dropped out in 11th grade due to her grandmother, who was dying, and not long after, her mother also passed away due to illness. In 1932, she wed at the age of 19. Raymond Parks was a self-educated man who worked as a barber and was a member of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, also known as the NAACP. Rosa eventually went to school and earned her high school diploma with the support of her husband. She worked as a seamstress and became a respected member of the Montgomery African American community. In 1943, Rosa joined the NAACP as a secretary.
So after she was elected to be secretary, she moved back to Montgomery and continued her job as a seamstress. It was on December 1st, 1955 that Rosa Parks left work and got on a bus to go home. This was the day that Rosa Parks started a revolution by sitting down. She sat down in the 5th row of the bus, which was considered the first row of the colored section. When the bus became full, white people had the privilege of sitting in the seats before an African American could. It was on that day that Rosa was approached by a white man and asked to move out of her seat. Before Rosa was asked to move, 3 other black passengers were asked to move, and they complied. But Rosa said no. After asking her to move several times, the man got the bus driver involved. The bus driver demanded that Rosa give her seat to the white man, but she refused and stayed sitting. 2 police officers came onto the bus, and after assessing the situation and trying to get Rosa to switch seats, they placed her in custody. Rosa told Pacifica Radio in April 1956, "The driver said that if I refused to leave the seat, he would have to call the police, and I told him, just call the police. The time had come when I had been pushed as far as I could stand to be pushed. Then the idea was born. The blacks of Montgomery would boycott the buses on the day of Rosa's trial, Monday, December 5th. A lot of African American people decided not to take the bus just because it was such a demeaning experience, but it was her arrest that truly sparked the Montgomery bus boycott, which lasted a year. Rosa was found guilty of violating segregation laws and given suspended sentence and fined $10 plus $4 in court costs. Again, the bus boycott went on for a year. On November 13, 1956, the Supreme Court ruled that bus segregation was unconstitutional. The boycott ended December 20th. The African American community continued to be mistreated and harassed. Ed Nixon, the radical labor organizer with the NAACP, and Martin Luther King Jr.'s home were bombed, along with the continued mistreatment of the rest of the black community. But when it came to the buses, there was no longer any segregation. Rosa Parks did something remarkable for the black community, as well as every other person who has ever felt cast out or marginalized. Back when this event took place, 70% or more of the riders on a bus on a typical day were black. Rosa Parks gave that 70% a voice. Rosa wrote in her autobiography, "People always say that I didn't give up my seat because I was tired, but that isn't true. I was not physically tired. No, the only tired I was tired of giving in." Because Rosa decided to say no and sat down, she helped change the course of history for millions of people, and Rosa Parks became known as the mother of the civil rights movement.
So as many of you guys know, Rosa Parks had a major impact on civil rights movement. It's a revolution that actually sparked like the whole nation and in the hearts of those affected by it. Many thought that the civil rights movement started because of this event. However, it actually started back in whenever the 13th Amendment was passed, which abolished slavery and freed all the slaves. Because after the slaves were freed, they were no longer slavery, but they were Jim Crow laws, they were sharecropping, basically slavery without the title. They were small little liberations. But the main thing was to yield the rights of blacks in the South and in all of America. Years after this event happened, years after the 13th Amendment happened, this Rosa Parks event happened and actually just reignited the fire of anger against segregation. From the simple refusal of the Montgomery bus boycott, like Eleanor said, lasted for about a year, and after the bus boycott ended, the buses got integrated, and it started the surge to integrate all public areas such as bathrooms, restrooms, and even water fountains. This also caught the attention of so many people because a year before, or less than a year before, the South African apartheid just ended, and that was a huge rival and a big fight that they fought for. Nelson Mandela, those people went to jail and prison, and many people actually died in the fights for that. So to come back to America, which was seen as such a better area, was just showing that this is a hard thing to swallow. Since then, Rosa's actions have made racism so much more evident and point out the blatant, unethical facts of them. No one should be discriminated against due to race, gender, or sexual orientation. While the country and world is still working on these three, Rosa Parks was a catalyst to the change that would eventually take over the United States of America. The ethical issue that this event showed was the treatment of other races in the United States. A lot of people would have thought that it was over with, but those people just never experienced it. When in actuality, there's still racism going on today at the moment. Before this happened, there were the Ku Klux Klan that would harm the blacks and often brutally murder them. Now, even after the laws against segregation in the workplace, there are many areas where minorities have to work twice as hard to get half a step ahead. Even in pay, where there is 77 cents for a white woman's. So there's for every $1 a white man gets, a woman gets 77 cents of it. But most people only talk about that when a black woman will get 55 cents of that, and a Hispanic woman will get 36 cents of that, which is unspeakable. The age of discrimination was taught to be over by those who have never experienced it. However, while Rosa Parks made a huge dent in the discussion that needed to be talked about, there's still many areas where discrimination occurs and there's just a block of the iceberg that needs to be slowly chipped away. One example is police discrimination and police brutality. Before you could get arrested for being a minority, yet now has rightly turned into deaths. Either way, the ethics of human interaction and treatment was impacted, yet there's still a lot of work to do. So, Kendra, what do you think this event taught you, or how do you think it impacted either your thoughts or how it might have shaped you to be maybe a different mindset?
I think that it brought to mind like separate but equal is not helpful, beneficial to anybody, and that we need to fight for what we think is right, no matter what the consequences are, because they can be drastic in the future.
For me, it was, as I was researching just her story and her life before the big event took place, and then the actual event of the bus boycott, the biggest thing that I feel like I've learned is just who am I willing to stand up for? Who am I willing to fight for and give a voice to? It took a lot of courage and strength and bravery for Rosa to do what she did, because she probably knew the consequences that were coming her way. And so just throughout our process of researching this and creating our project, I've just been thinking about who's the people group or who's the person at school who maybe I need to stand up for and fight for.
Yeah, one thing that I actually noticed, and a lot of people talk about it, is that a lot of people think that Rosa Parks did this for Black women, when in actuality it was for all women, because if it was a white woman or a Hispanic or any woman and a white man asked for a seat and she said no, the same thing would have happened. And people didn't get that mindset that it's for a black woman, because it's not. It's for everybody who actually felt discriminated against or not treated ethically, even though she was a black woman. It doesn't matter the color of her skin. The fact that what she did, like you said, she knew what her cost was going to be, still did it. And it kind of says, like, how am I going to step up? How am I going to show what I need to do? And just, it kind of is a good, fresh reminder to be like, you know what? Yes, like, it's getting better, and there are areas where this has happened and it's getting better. It kind of also brings to mind, like, it was really bad back then, but it's getting better now. But in other countries, it's not. So if Rosa Parks did it here, I want to be able to go do it somewhere else, and I want to be able to go home another country, establish those rights, those laws, just anything, because one, it's our role as Christians to just teach everyone and spread the word of God to all the nations, and also just as a decent human being, I think it's also part of our role to make sure that everyone is being taken account for. Yeah. Now, I think for closing actions, we should pray.